everyone, and welcome to the beautiful campus of Middle Tennessee State University, where we are live with the season finale of Blue Raider Extra Point. I'm Dylan Simmons, joined alongside Brett Walker and Evan Snyder, and boys, are we ready for a great season finale?
Yeah, it's a little cold, a little chilly, but we should get through it, and I'm excited to, close this thing out.
Well, we bit chilly, but I think we're going to have a slugfest today, so I'm excited for some old-fashioned football.
Hey, It's a great day for some football, Brett. Let's get right into it by going around the CUSA. Evan Snyder is going to tell us a little bit about the CUSA championship race right now.
With 2 games left to go, things are getting action-packed in this week's Around the CUSA. Looking at the standings, Jacksonville State sits at the top of the conference at a perfect 6-0 record in conference play, and being 7-3 overall. With some teams, however, in do-or-die situations, let's talk about it. One of those teams being reigning conference champions Liberty, and their hopes are looking pretty grim. Escaping a nail-biter versus UMass in a non-conference game last week, the Flames face a tough battle. They need to win out and also need Western Kentucky and Sam Houston to lose their last 2 games of the season to find a spot in the conference championship, and let the face-off against Western Kentucky to try to stay alive. Now, when you look at Western Kentucky, they're pretty much in the exact same situation as Liberty, where they need to win their last 2 games of the season, but they just need Sam Houston to lose their last 2 in order to find a spot in that conference championship. However, Western Kentucky is coming off a tough loss against La Tech, losing that game 7-12, and of course they have to face off against Liberty this weekend. For Sam Houston, they're riding high right now with a 23-17 overtime win versus Kennesaw State last weekend. Sam Houston isn't locked into the conference championship just yet. They also need to win out and for Western Kentucky to lose at least 1 game. Or Sam Houston wins 1 game and Western Kentucky to lose their last 2. But the Bearcats have a tall task ahead of them as they face top dogs Jacksonville State this weekend. I know a lot of crazy situations going on this week, but make sure you catch all the action inside of Conference USA, especially with Liberty versus Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State versus Sam Houston, which these games could decide who we see in the conference championship.
All right, thanks, Evan. It seems like that CUSA championship race is really coming down to the wire.
Yeah, you have 4 teams fighting for that top spot. Jacksonville State pretty much is going to be in the conference championship, kind of no matter what at this point. But for Liberty, if they lose against Western Kentucky this weekend, they're basically going to be mathematically eliminated to make a push for that second spot. And for Western Kentucky, it's the same situation. There are do-or-die situations all across the conference right now. And if you are a CUSA fanatic, this is the weekend to watch college football inside the conference.
It is going to be fun down the stretch, Evan. And speaking of that, let's take a look at some CUSA matchups on your screen right now. First up, we're going to have Sam Houston versus Jacksonville State today, then Western Kentucky versus Liberty. FIU travels to Kennesaw State. New Mexico State taking on MTSU right here in Murfreesboro. UTEP, Brett, you'll like this one, going to the University of Tennessee to play the Vols, and Louisiana Tech travels to Fayetteville to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks.
UTEP is getting paid apparently $1.6 million to go to Knoxville and play.
Hey, money helps certainly in this situation, guys.
Yeah.
Money certainly helps. All right, we'll be right back with the scoop and scouting report right here on Blue Raider Extra Point. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here at the Grove at Middle Tennessee State University. Brett here. Got to sit down with Carpio Grigo to talk a little bit more about the New Mexico State Aggies in this week's episode of The Scoop.
Welcome into this week's edition of The Scoop. I'm here with Carpio Grigo. He's the New Mexico State student newspaper staff writer covering football for The Roundup. Carpio, thank you for meeting with me today. How are you doing?
No problem, Brett. Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty good this morning.
Coming in with new regimes. Y'all got Tony Sanchez. What has that kind of transition been like coming from Jerry Kill?
Last year, our record was kind of flipped. That's what it is now. But I think that's to be expected considering when a coach like Kill leaves and a lot of players transfer after that. The season's been a little disappointing, but I'm not going to say I was expecting us to go back to the conference title game, but I don't know. I feel like there were opportunities throughout the year that we could have maybe had 3 or 4 wins by this time instead of 2.
Now, looking over at the offense, Seth McGowan and Santino Marucci obviously dominating on the ground game. Who are some other guys maybe who are impact players heading into Saturday?
Another player that's been big is the other running back, Mike Washington. Him and McGowan are basically have been like splitting reps, but they're both having good seasons. The key would just be to keep giving the ball to Washington and McGowan until Middle Tennessee stops it. Like, if you can stop the run game, you can kind of stop the Aggies.
Thank you for that, Brett. I mean, obviously, the biggest thing and biggest detriment to this New Mexico State team is losing guys like Diego Pavia, who went to Vanderbilt. Actually, a lot of their guys did go to Vanderbilt. That's kind of hurt them. But Dylan Simmons, with the scouting report, was able to do more of a deep dive on New Mexico State and kind of what they're bringing to the table coming here to Murfreesboro. Let's take a look at that.
For the final scouting report of 2024, we are heading out west to Aggie country. New Mexico State is off to a 2-8 start to the season, but don't underestimate their fight on the gridiron. This team heavily relies on the run, and that runs through the tandem of Seth McGowan and Mike Washington. McGowan currently leads the team in rushing yards with 702 total on the year, and an average of over 70 yards per game. Washington leads the team in rushing touchdowns with 6 on the year and is coming off a 152-yard performance against Western Kentucky in the Aggies' last conference game. With MTSU having the worst rushing defense in CUSA, New Mexico State could have a chance to pounce. While the Aggies have been rolling on the ground, their air attack has been grounded all year long. New Mexico State currently has the worst passing offense in CUSA, with an average of only 114.1 passing yards per game. That average also ranks them as the number 131 passing offense out of 133 qualified teams in the country. Currently, the QB situation is in flux for the Aggies, as they have gone back and forth for most of the year between Santino Marucci and Parker Awad. If MTSU can keep New Mexico State one-dimensional on offense, the chance to win is there for the taking. With the struggles that both teams have had this season, it could make for one of the more unpredictable games of the year in CUSA. Either way, the excitement for this one will be nothing short of electric.
Thank you for that, Dylan. Of course, kind of some question marks around this New Mexico State team with all those transfers like we did already mention. You know, their run game, though, has looked really, really strong, so we got to look at that and what MTSU has to do to stop that run game.
Yeah, it's going to be the key for MTSU, New Mexico State, with a very solid run game. And, you know, when I was doing my preparation for this scouting report, it seems like these two teams are kind of mirror reflections of each other, so it's going to be an interesting one today. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have the Blue Raider Spotlight as well as keys to succeed, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Blue Raider Extra Point.
Welcome back to Blue Raider Extra Point, live from the campus here at MTSU. This week, our very own Jacob Burgess sat down with MTSU kicker Zeke Rankin to talk about real estate. Let's take a look.
When I'm approaching a kick, no matter what kick, the first thing I'm telling myself is I'm going to make it, right? I'm going to make it. I'm going to close the deal. I'm not going to mess up. I know I'm going to do the very best and trust my training. The good thing about kicking is nothing changes. I walk out there, I try to take a slower approach, deep breath, line up, 3 steps back, 2 steps over, look at where I'm going to put the ball. It's always going to be a 90-degree angle triangle directly to the ball.
Zeke Rankin from 37.
And then from there, you kind of almost black out a little bit.
Arc, slope, trajectory, altitude.
I don't want to say habits, but it is almost like rituals that you'll kind of do slowly to develop the same consistency over time. It's all the same approach. You got to have great attention to detail. All my steps and details and alignments all have to be the same every single time. You know, there's just as much training in sports as there is in, you know, a job site. The finance and concentration in real estate major at MTSU, I dove into that when I was a sophomore. I had a family friend who owns probably one of the biggest real estate companies in town, John Jones. Reached out to him, he figured out I got my license. He was like, why don't you come work for me? Each property is its own specific property, right? Nothing's ever gonna be the same. The same way we talked about no kick is ever the same. But at the same time, you're always gonna attack it in the same manner. If I'm going out to kick a field goal, how long does that play last? From the time it's snapped to the time I kick it, 1.25 seconds. Because I've trained for 4 to 5 years to be in that position to make a kick. I've been working with them for a very, very long time, and it's the same thing as training. I'm always going to make the same vocabulary that I'm using.
Closing, equity, investment, money down,
everything we do, you're striving to be the best. And we talk about it at football every day. The standards is what we say, but also our standard is the best. You want to be the very best at it no matter what it is, whether it's selling houses, kicking footballs.
It's money in the bank.
Thanks for that, Jacob. You know, Evan, whether it's on the football field or in the field of real estate, I think it's safe to say that Zeke has a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he makes it in the NFL. He's one of the best kickers inside the conference. And, of course, too, hopefully, you know, the real estate stuff works out for him. I know how hard it can be to juggle both of them, you know, working a full-time job, being a college athlete. So I hope either or works out for him in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you to both Jacob and Zeke. But, boys, it's time to go into some keys to succeed. We'll start with Evan. What does MTSU have to do to defeat New Mexico State?
Yeah, so my first thing is we need to force turnovers for the Blue Raiders. That's going to be the biggest thing. You saw it against Liberty where they did force a couple turnovers. They're able to capitalize on them, but I know you're going to touch on that here in a little bit, Dylan. So we'll leave that to you. But they need to step up against New Mexico State, and just the defense at all needs to force these turnovers because New Mexico State, 129th in turnover margins in the country. Terrible. That's awful.
Not good.
Not good at all. They turn over the ball way too much. The defense needs to stop that and step up huge with that. Then, of course, through the run game. Run the dang ball, Derek. Run the ball. I mean, sure, you don't have Frank Pizon. This offensive line is kind of just being sewed together at this point. I mean, you don't really have much going on the run offense, but you got to get the run game going if you want to have success throughout this entirety of this game against New Mexico State. And lastly, this one's more for Nick Vattiato. We need him to step up with the passing game. I mean, he's the past 3 games have passed for almost or over 230 yards. No picks either for the most part. You see those pick numbers go down. He threw 2 touchdowns against Liberty. And again, if the defense steps up, they probably beat Liberty in that game. So if Vattiato can step up, keep up with this consistency, Blue Raiders will have an easy chance at beating the Aggies here.
Absolutely, Evan. And you talked about it a little bit, alluding to the run game there. But it starts with the big boys up front. They've got to pull the wagon today against New Mexico State.
Run the ball and pull it.
MTSU's offensive line has been horrid this season. They haven't had any success running the football. And I was talking to offensive coordinator Bodie Reeder yesterday, and he's like, we want to be a run-first team, but we just haven't been able to do that. They've had 8 offensive line combinations, just a mix and match throughout the season. It's the most in the country. And so it's just been really hard for them to run the ball like they want to. And secondly, it's unforced errors. Whether it be turnovers or stupid penalties, it's been killing the Blue Raiders all year. Last week against Liberty, they had a sequence where they stopped the Flames. They had a too many men penalty, and that bumped the Flames up to 4th and 3. And then the Flames went for it on 4th and 3, didn't get it, but it got negated because an MTSU player was offside.
Right.
The Liberty picked up a first down, and then they walked down and scored into the end zone for points. So you just can't have unforced errors like that hurting your football team. And lastly, they got to feed Holden Willis this week.
Because no Amari Kelly.
No Amari Kelly this week.
Kelly.
He's going to be out probably with that hamstring injury lingering again. So they're going to have to feed the big man and push him into the end zone in his last home game for senior day.
It's going to be crucial for MTSU. For my first key, I've got seize the moment. Now, we saw against Liberty back on November 9th that MTSU was able to force a bevy of turnovers, but they didn't really capitalize on those turnovers. New Mexico State is tied for 129th in the country in turnover margin, so MTSU is going to get theirs. They've just got to take advantage of their opportunities. Number 2, win in the trenches. We've seen how important it is all year long for MTSU to win on the line. They're going to have to make sure to do that again in this game. And lastly, the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't make stupid mistakes. Don't make boneheaded mistakes and cost yourself the game with an offsides call or a holding call or whatever the case may be. Just go out there and simply do one thing, and that is execute.
Yeah.
Those are our keys to succeed. When we come back, we'll have our final picks of the week with a special guest picker, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Blue Raider Extra Point. Okay. Welcome back to Blue Raider Extra Point. It's time for our picks of the week, but before we do that, I want to introduce our special guest picker, Mr. Kareem Alameen from the MTSU men's tennis team and defending Conference USA champion is here. Kareem, glad to have you on today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely glad to have you guys. I know you got some questions for him.
Yeah, so my first one is going to be talk more about tennis players. I want to pick your brain a little bit. Who is better? Who's considered more of a GOAT in your mind, Roger Federer or Novak Djokovic? I've been butchering it a little bit, but who's better in your mind?
That's an incredibly difficult question. Djokovic obviously has won the most major titles and a lot of other titles. Federer has won over 100 ATP Tour level titles. I believe for me, growing up, me being a one-handed backhand player, I will say Roger is more of a GOAT for me than Djokovic, also because he inspired so many generations. And I believe for me, in my head, Roger will always be my GOAT.
Only the most heated GOAT debates here on Blue Raider Extra Point. But Kareem, I wanted to ask you, you guys are going for your 6th straight conference title this season. How does head coach Jimmy Borngame keep you guys locked in, even with all the success that you've had so far?
I mean, Coach Jimmy is doing an incredible job with that. I think he always says we have a target on our back, and with every championship we win, the target only gets bigger. So we're the team to beat in Conference USA, and that puts us in a difficult spot, honestly, because everybody comes up to play against us. But Coach Jimmy is doing an amazing job with that. He always keeps us motivated and on our toes to beat everybody who's coming our way.
That he does, certainly. You guys certainly have a championship mentality. Good luck in 2025, Kareem. But now it's time to get in for our picks of the week. We will start with a potential CUSA championship game preview. Jacksonville State takes on Sam Houston.
Yeah, this is a tough pick between these two teams. You know, two teams fighting at the top of the conference. And, you know, for Sam Houston, they're not mathematically locked into the conference championship yet. I mean, they still have to win at least one of these games at Western Kentucky to lose their next 2 if they do just win one game. And Jack State has just looked absolutely just stellar this entire season. And I think the Gamecocks are going to pull it off against Sam Houston in this one. So I just have to go Jacksonville State.
And you said it, Evan. You know, Jack State's looked phenomenal this year, but I think it's really going to come down with these two good teams to who wants it more today.
Yeah.
And I think Sam Houston, I think they need this one to get to that championship. I think Jack State's probably safe. Sam Houston needs this one a little bit more. So I'm going to go with the Bearcats here today. Kareem, who you got in this one?
That's a difficult question, but I will go with the Jacksonville Gamecocks just because they've been phenomenal all season long, and I believe they will not fold to Sam Houston.
All right, good pick. I like that. Now, when it comes to Jacksonville State, no introduction is needed. They got one of the best offenses, probably the best offense in CUSA right now, averaging 258.2 rushing yards per game. Trey Stewart, he's been like Tony Stewart all season long because he always finds a way to beat guys to the line.
Shout out Smoke.
I think the Jacksonville State offense looking great so far, but Sam Houston, they've also had a great season. Casey Keeler has done a great job turning this program around. This is going to be a tough one, a good old-fashioned smash-mouth football game, but I think it favors the Bearcats at home. Give me Sam Houston to win this game. Next up, Liberty takes on Western Kentucky.
Again, I said it already. If you're a Conference USA fanatic, this is the weekend to watch football because you have teams fighting for their life and fighting for a championship, essentially, starting this week. And, I mean, Liberty kind of a little dodgy these past couple weeks. You know, lost against Kennesaw State, barely beat UMass, and of course, you know, Western Kentucky losing to Louisiana Tech last week. But I think I gotta go with the Hilltoppers. I mean, sure they struggled against La Tech, but I think that's just a one-off game. I don't think it's gonna happen against Liberty, and they're gonna take on the Flames, and I think they're just gonna smack them in the mouth.
Yeah, Evan, this one's going to be an interesting one because if you looked at this matchup on the schedule at the start of the season, you're thinking this is the best of the best that this conference has to offer. This is going to be your number 1 and your number 2 teams based off preseason rankings. But that just hasn't happened.
That's not how it shaked out at all.
Liberty kind of hit a downward spiral there in the middle of the season, dropping games to Kennesaw State and Jack State in back-to-back weeks. And then again last week, they had just an absolute slugfest with a pitiful UMass team. Mm-hmm. And then meanwhile, Western Kentucky, on the other hand, they've been hot all year, and last year they had easily their worst loss of the season, 12-7 against Louisiana Tech. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you look at the season as a whole, I'm going to go with the Hilltoppers today. They've had that one bad performance. I think it's just a one-off, whereas Liberty's kind of been, they've kind of been on the downward trend recently other than the MTSU game. What about you, Kareem?
Obviously, the Liberty Flames had an amazing season last year. I was pretty impressed by that. This season, they don't look as good, but I am still going with the Liberty Flames here because I believe to be in that conference championship. I feel like they have to win this game, so I will go with the Flames.
Desperation is certainly going to be a factor for Liberty. Now, Western losing to Louisiana Tech last week, it was shocking. It was as shocking as Kendrick Lamar dropping his new album yesterday. That's how shocking it was. WKU had scored no less than 31 points in a conference game so far this season, so to only score 7 against Louisiana Tech, unbelievable. Now, Caden Veltkamp, he's still a dog. Elijah Young, he's been a great running back all season long. But there's one thing that concerns me with Western Kentucky in this game, and it's their rushing defense. They're giving up an average of 121.5 yards per game so far this season. And what does Liberty do well? Run the football. Caden Salter and Quentin Cooley are going to run the ball down Western Kentucky's throats, and I think it's going to favor the Flames. Give me Liberty to pull off a little bit of an upset and keep their CUSA championship game hopes alive. Next up, FIU takes on Kennesaw State.
Yeah, this is another tough one for me as being a South Florida boy. I love Pitbull. I love Mr. Worldwide. Love me some 305. But Kennesaw State, though, they're kind of piecing things back together. Sure, they fired their head coach. Sure, you can find their head coaching job on Indeed, but that's besides the point. I just think the Owls kind of have some good things going for them. They've looked kind of solid in these past couple games, and the Panthers also, too, not that great of a team either. So I think, though, Kennesaw State, they are playing at home. I do think they're going to pull it out against the Panthers.
Yeah, you know, guys, college football is a weird place. If you asked me this question 2 weeks ago, I think no doubt I probably would have went with Kennesaw State to win this game. They were coming off a tight loss against MTSU. They beat Liberty for their first ever FBS win. And then fast forward a few weeks, they fire their head coach, the man who built their program. Brian Bohannon built that program up for 10 years and got them into the FBS level, and then let him go. So he was obviously a guy who cared about the program. I don't know about everything behind the scenes, but you know, he showed up for his players the week after he got fired, and that just shows how much he cared about this team. So I think that locker room is going to be down a little bit after losing their head coach. And so for that, I got to go with the guys from the 305 FIU today. Kareem, who you got in this one?
That's a difficult pick for me as well. Both teams have been struggling a little bit this season. Kennesaw State, obviously, with one of the major upsets this season in Conference USA, in my opinion. But I will go with the Panthers on this one. I think they will not be able, the Kennesaw State will not be able to get their second win of the season against the Panthers.
All right, going for the Panthers. Now, I'll say this about Kennesaw State and their former head coach, Brian Bohannon. That's one of the most perplexing firings I've seen in the FBS in recent memories. It feels like the guy was trending the program in the right direction, so a very odd decision to make. But Kennesaw State, they've been playing well against opponents as of late. Think about this. In 4 of their last 5 games, they've been decided by single digits, but Kennesaw State's still only 1-9 in that time, so they've got to find a way to execute late. FIU, no disrespect to Mr. 305, but they've not been playing like a fireball. They've been playing like a snowball. So FIU has not been playing quite up to the same par, but I think they're pretty evenly matched on paper. It's going to be a close game, but give me the Owls to defeat FIU and get their second win of the regular season. And now, guys, the moment we've all been waiting for, the grand finale, our final pick of the year. New Mexico State takes on Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a grueler of a matchup for both teams. I mean, I know, Brett, you're going to have some things to say about it here in a second, so I won't steal your thunder. But it's two teams that have not really been too great. You know, New Mexico State last season, top of the conference, runners-up in the conference play, and MTSU, you know, making a bowl game. And both teams, bowl eligibility is out the window no matter what, if you win or lose this game, so it doesn't really matter. It's just going to be, you know, smash-mouth football. I think it's going to be a really tough game. You know, it's a little cold here in Murfreesboro today, so I think that's going to maybe play a factor. But I think for the first time on air, you're going to be surprised by this, Dylan.
Really?
I think I'm going to go with the Blue Raiders here over the
Oh, my
Aggies.
goodness.
I know.
Yes.
And to be fair, I have been set up for failure in the past, you know, picking against, like, Liberty and some other, like, Western Kentucky.
Sure.
So I was set up for failure,
That's true.
but today I am going with the Blue Raiders.
It's an interesting one today. It's senior day here at MTSU. It's cold. It's probably going to be pretty gross. You look at these two teams. You look at MTSU, a team that cannot run the ball, and then on the other side of the spectrum, you got New Mexico State, a team that can't pass the ball. So you've got completely two different
Very odd ends of the spectrum.
spectrums of offensive failure out on the field today. But I think when it comes down to it, MTSU, they got the home crowd. It's senior day. I think it's 24 Blue Raiders playing their last home game at Floyd Stadium.
Right.
I think that's going to be enough to get MTSU over the edge. Kareem, what about you?
Yeah, both teams are looking to close out the season with a win, obviously. But I believe that our guys at home on senior day, they will be pushing as hard as they can. They will be fighting for their lives. And I believe that we will pull it off today and beat the Aggies at home.
I like it. Now, I got one thing to say, or more accurately, do. Give me 1 second.
Yep, there you go. You
Putting
got
on
it.
the helmet.
Yep, there you go.
Wow.
Give me MTSU to win this game by a score of 27-21 over the New Mexico State Aggies.
Good old M. Very interesting, Dylan.
I've always wanted to do that, to finally
There
get the
you go.
Lee
You finally
Corso
got it.
headgear selection. And how about this, guys? For the
For our
first
last
time
show.
all season long, a clean sweep of
Yeah.
MTSU picks. So
It's the
kudos
first
to
time
you
for
guys.
everything.
How about
time
that?
for
First
everything.
time for everything on the grand finale of the season. But before we send it off, let's take a look at some of our social medias. Follow us on Instagram, X, and all of our other social media platforms. Got some great MTN content for all of you to tune into. But that's going to do it for today's show, so thank you all so much for watching all season long. For our producer, Ronnie Portson, for Evan Snyder and Brett Walker, I am Dylan Simmons saying so long, and remember to always have an electric night.